Welcome back to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton, and welcome to the return of the player review segment. Now the season is officially over. I mean, we didn't know where we stood back then, but we've finally got the season completely out of the way, and we can get back to rating our players' performances this season. But today we're actually going to be reviewing a player who hadn't actually kicked the ball for Everton until about just over 2 weeks ago, and of course that player is Jarrad Branthwaite. So, yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one because we didn't really know much about him, but obviously we've had just 4 games, not even 4 full games of watching Jarrad Branthwaite, but we'll go through it anyway. We'll start with you, Thomas. Really signed this lad in January from Carlisle United in League 2. But what have you made of him so far?
I mean, he's been absolutely brilliant. The way he's stepped in. I'm not going to say he's like a brilliant footballer. I'm sure I really hope he goes on to be. I don't think we can say that after 4 games. But just the ability to step into a team on the decline and be as good, and kind of the calm presence that he has been. Because imagine, you turn 18 years old, while the season's still going on. You're 17 when you sign. You come into a team where team leaders like Gylfi Sigurdsson, the captain, sometimes, don't care. They're coming in, they're not kind of motivating anyone. You come into a team, you never played Premier League football, you barely even kicked a football in League 2, to be fair, because he didn't make loads of appearances for Carlisle senior team while he was there. He's done really well to come in. I hope Holgate stays fit, and I hope maybe we do sign a centre-back to take the limelight off him a bit, because he's been thrown into very much a baptism of fire. And I have called him the second coming of Maldini in one of my tweets, which was obviously a bit of a joke, and some people didn't appreciate that. But I really hope he does well. I hope he's not just forced into it next season, because he still obviously has a lot of time to develop. Younger than me, which is a ridiculous stat. I think I've said it quite a few times, but it's still the most insane stat I can think about. I think he's done really well when he's come in, but I hope he's given the chance to spend more time around the squad, not having to start every week, learning from the players around him before he's kind of just thrown in every game. Because let's be honest, after that Wolves game, I was concerned because I didn't personally criticise him for the foul he gave away and then obviously the free kick, but I knew there'd be so many people on Twitter who would come flying in, and I felt bad from them, but he's answered them perfectly already. Had a good game against Villa, had a ridiculously good game against Sheffield United after a nervy start. And when you say young players kind of have nervy starts, sometimes, you see them get substituted off. They don't really, get their head down. But he had a poor start against Sheffield United, then turned around to become the man of the match, which is a lot to be said for a player that young. And I think he's got a lot of potential, to be fair.
Yeah, it's definitely something to look forward to next season. When we, by God, we need them. Some things to look forward to. But Terry, what do you make of Branthwaite's 4 appearances so far in an Everton shirt?
I mean, he's took everyone by surprise, hasn't he? I think even the club he's took by surprise. There's no way he was brought in with one eye on playing first team football. What he's done is he's spared the club's blushes, because we went into the season with 3 senior centre backs, and we got away with it right up until the project restart, when it obviously bit us quite hard because we got Mina and Holgate injured at once. I personally think he was brought in to be in the under-23s and be behind Lewis Gibson, who you've got to wonder, how does he feel right now?
Because I think he went out on loan, and was he not out on loan for the restart? I think we'd have probably seen him.
Yeah, probably. I think he would have been ahead of Branthwaite in the pecking order, but he's come in and he's acquitted himself. He's done really well. It's just now it's a matter of what do we do with him next, because he's obviously made the impression now. Supporters have seen him. You can grasp onto those performances and go, right, well, he's an option. He's not this intangible under-23 player who you go, is he good enough? I don't know. I haven't seen him, but now people have seen him. Anytime there'll be a bad centre-back performance, people will clamour for him to come in.
Oh, God, yeah.
That's fair enough. He's put himself in that conversation. So what do we do with him now? For me, there's only two options. It's either he goes out on loan, but a good loan, like a John Joe Kenny to Schalke loan, goes to a good club who needs a centre-back, not João Virginia, who'll just go and he'll get dropped and then he won't play. He'll just sit on someone else's bench. Go to a club who needs a centre-back. who play at a decent level, Championship or somewhere else, one of the other leagues, because he's only young. Like Thomas said, then he's younger than he is. Now that Baines has gone, they're all younger than I am. That's a weird thought. But he's still got mistakes to make. He's still learning. He's not played a lot of football. He's got the ability. He's got the talent. He's certainly got the physique. He seems like he's a proper player, like a men's side player. But he needs to go out and play regularly, week in, week out, so he can learn. I don't want him to be making his mistakes at Everton
in front of angry Everton fans,
because it's too high a level. There's too much pressure. Like I think he needs to be out on loan, a good loan, and be playing regular football. The other alternative is keep him around and have him be the fourth centre back if we get Gabriel and Michael Keane goes, because then you've got two left-sided centre backs in Gabriel and Branthwaite, and you'd have two right within Mina and Holgate. Now there's obviously a lot of ifs and buts there, and Michael Keane, there's whilst a lot of people have mentioned him moving on because it seems like a good fit if we get Gabriel, there's no one linked with him. Could not happen. We could get Gabriel and Michael Keane stays. We could not get Gabriel, but there is something to be said for keeping him around, the first team squads and having him figure in that. But what he cannot do now at this point, I don't want to see him play under 23 football. I think that'd be a regression. He's gone from playing first team football in Carlisle to having first team games in the Premier League. I don't want to see him then suddenly go into the under 23s. I think that'd be a step backwards for him. So for me, it's either on loan or incorporate him into the four. And if that doesn't, if you're looking to bring Gibson back and then he goes and is the fourth centre back or whatever the plan is, then Branthwaite's got to go out on loan. I don't want to see him go out anywhere lower than the Championship. I wouldn't like to see him in League One. I think he's proved he can.
I think he's good enough for the Championship at worst.
Yeah, I think his pathway has been jet propelled. I think these three performances, was it 3 or 4?
4, but
4,
yeah.
Yes. I think these 4 performances have knocked a year off his developments. Like they've fast forwarded him past the league. I think he would have went to a Fleetwood or a League One side had he not played. He'd have gone from League Two being bought into Everton's under 23s into a League One side maybe. I think he's absolutely put the jet boosters on his progression, and now he's at the loan to Germany, loan to the Netherlands, loan to the Championship stage, and then come back and see if you're a first teamer. Credit to the lad. I think he's been brilliant.
I think this is a point now. Sorry, just with our under 23s, because obviously there's been a lot questioned about do we utilise the under 23s team correctly. We have so many players who get stuck there; they don't go out on loan. This is an absolute. This could be a turning point for the club in that kind of strategy of
how we handle it.
Funnily
enough, I was just about to interrupt you with exactly what you've just said.
Right, sorry.
So, yeah, well played. You're spot on.
Yeah, this is a massive chance now for the club to go, we haven't done well enough with the under-23s. Ben and Gimme hasn't done well enough. Bowler's done all right at Hull, but he hasn't pulled up any trees. Virginia was not good enough for Reading. And then you look at players like Matthew Pennington, who's like twice my age these days. He's ridiculously old. Garbett left at what,
27. He was older than Luca Dean by the time he left.
Ridiculous, really. This is the point now where we see if there is a genuine problem at the club with the structure. That if we now have a player like Branthwaite, who's done so well in the last 4 games, if he then gets put back into the under-23s, which is League Two level at best, I'd say, obviously, because they've kind of got the Checker Trade Trophy, haven't they, where it's meant to be them. It's under-23s versus League Two and League One clubs. Tends to be won by League One clubs. So I'd say there's probably League Two-ish level for players like the under-23s. He cannot afford to drop into there now, and the club can't afford to put him in there now because they've seen it stunts players' growth massively. And if he needs a loan, I'm sure the club will know that because they're clearly intent on signing Gabriel. They'll have Gibson coming back, who's had his time out on loan. Branthwaite he can't afford to now go into the under-23s, waste away, because he looks like a very good player if he realises his potential.
Let's be honest, we've badly mishandled the under-23s for a long time. How do we best utilise the under-23s? Because who plays in that team when it's obviously a bit of a barrier to the growth, like you say?
I'd changed the name for the kick-off. This wasn't my idea. I've nicked this off El Pavotti, so just full disclosure. Change it to what Man City do. Call it the development squad. Don't call it the under-23s. And the way to change it is just make decisions on players earlier. Don't have situations like Pennington where you're giving him contracts when he's like 20 and he doesn't look like he's going to be the first team centre back, because then 4 years go by and he's like a middle 20s player who's never going to play for you, and like you're just trying your best to, you're going to end up loaning him until his contract runs out. Have a clear sort of strategy when it comes to the age range. Go, right, well, under 18s, and then when you turn 18, unless you're a special standout talent, when you turn 18 you go into the under 23s, and by the time you're 19 we make a decision on you. We either let you go or we sign you up for another 2 years, and then by the time you're 21 we let you go or we sign you up for a proper contract and what have you. We can't have players who are 23, 24 who are in this under 23 squad, because if you don't, you should know by then.
I was always under the impression it was always the under 21s, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't change it to under 23s. I think that was a league-wide thing. But
But that's the unwritten rules should be under 21s, in my opinion.
I'd just call it, like City called it, I think it was the elite development squads. I'd just call it the development squads or the reserves or Everton.
Well, that's it. It was always reserves when I was a kid.
Yeah, I'd just call it the development team, and I'd just make it an issue. Like, you cannot go past a certain age without a decision being made. If you are 20, you're either being sold or you're not getting a new contract, or you're going into the first team because you're good enough. And there'll be ones who slip through, but we won't be spending. We've got players now on decent professional contracts who are never going to play. I mean, Garbutt's the one everyone holds up.
Pennington's the worst one, I think, for the worst example, though.
Yeah,
at least Garbutt showed a bit of promise.
Well, Pennington is another one in the sense of he's, like I've said this before and I'll say it again, he's older than Yerry Mina. It's like, that's not his fault. He's a professional player, and he's, for what you read, he's a good player. Leeds wanted him like 2 years ago, and he's of a certain level, but we've just dragged our feet so badly. We've not made the decision on him. We've just dawdled, and now he's like 24. He's probably got a year left on his contract. No one's going to buy him, so we're just going to go, well, who can we loan him to until his contract expires, like Nias and Martina, and it'll be the same for other lads like Callum Connolly and players like that. Just before we started recording, I saw a tweet put out by someone. I think it was Stop Bunching on Twitter. Don't know the proper name. It's one of the lads who works on El Pavotti. He works with El Pavotti's firm, Market Insights, and he said that Anthony Robinson has got a 1.5 million release clause if we're getting relegated. I would be comfortable if Everton went back and got him now, because we've sold him. We made the decision on him early. He's gone. He's proved himself at Wigan. He's getting linked with AC Milan. He would be at AC Milan if it weren't for his medical. Let's be honest. Watford won him. West Ham won him. He's clearly gone out and proved himself. And obviously he's got the release clause. But why, in future, why don't we have buyback clauses and things like that?
It's got to be. If Marcel Brands is worth his salt, you've got to be doing that with these players we've got to sell them early, like you say. How many times have Real Madrid done it with the likes of Morata and people like that? Well, Mariano.
If Robinson had not gone to Wigan, we hadn't sold him and made the decision. Yeah, we've got Baines, we've got Dean. He's not going to cut it here. And then he was still here and he was playing under 23 football. No one had even, you know what I mean? He wouldn't have played that. Senior football.
He'd fade away. He's played Championship football, which is not bad. That's a very respectable start to his career now. Whereas, like you say, the under 23s is the equivalent of probably League Two. So that's 2 rungs up.
It might not work. I know I'm a layman. I don't know how the contracts and that work. But if you make the decision when they're a lot younger, but you're scared that it's going to come back and bite you, try and put buyback clauses in them, or put sell-on fees, put something in there.
Sell players and try and do those kind of deals, yeah.
Rather than wrap them all up and keep them long term and never use them. Callum Connolly, he apparently, does really well wherever he goes on loan, but he's not going to play it for Everton. So let him go. Let him go and have a career somewhere else. We shouldn't have kept him and just let him have half his career in loans. I mean, it'd be different if we were like Chelsea and we had loads of like high-profile international players. We were getting $6 million per loan. They make loads of money just from loan fees. If we had that, that'd be one thing. But I can't even imagine we do that. We're loaning these players out to get some of their wages off the books. We're not loaning them out because it's a good source of revenue.
Absolutely, and I mean, it's just interesting that we've been run so badly in this respect. We've always had a good academy as well, which is, I mean, I have a funny feeling we had our fingers burnt. We're talking 10 years ago now with Dan Gosling, didn't we?
Yeah.
Where he exploited a thing in his contract and left for nothing. I think things like that might sort of have been playing in the academy's mind and thinking, we don't want to fall into that trap again. But equally, we've gone from one extreme to the other, and we're holding on too long. It's costing us more money than we need to. We need to get a much better strategy, and I think you guys have highlighted it perfectly here, haven't you?
They just need the club needs a consistent contract strategy and structure that's not kind of taking a punt on players like Garbutt and giving them long-term contracts when they might have had potential hand. They just need a constant revolving door. You look at teams like City, who they have some of the best youth talents in the country, but they're all so young and they're under 23s. But also they're getting new players every year. Our youth players have been the same youth players for the past 5 years. They've just been stuck. If you look at the bigger clubs, yes, they have stand-up players like Mason Greenwood at United, but they have new players every year, which everyone's paying attention to, and it creates more competition for young players to kind of, step up. And
it keeps the first teamers on the toes as well.
It does as well, but it's disappointing because youth systems these days are just not the Everton way. They're not the way that Ken Wright would want to operate the club. He wants to give everyone contract. He wants to have everyone sorted. He doesn't want to put kids out, on the streets. But you got to be ruthless if you run the club like we're trying to run, like Mashari wants to run. And if we're going to try and save money on transfers, which we have to, the worst, we've had one of the worst transfer strategies in the league for a few years. If you want to save money and you look to your youth team, you can't have youth players who have been stagnating for a while. If they're constantly changing, if there's almost like a flat approach where you come in, you got a year in the development side, if we'll call it that, you get a year on loan. If you're not good enough, that's it. If you go out on loan and you do well, the club can either sell you because you've signed them on a 3-year contract. They can either sell you because you've got 1 year left, and the club haven't, left themselves up to kind of, sign a player. Like, I don't want to compare us to Sunderland, but there was something on the Sunderland documentary where it was something like, they had a bunch of talented youth players, but the contract strategy, left it up to, they didn't have an optional 1 year extension, or they let them go on loan, and when they came back, the contract was up, which left the club massively kind of susceptible to not getting anything for these players. If the club just had a consistent strategy and not kind of a scattergun of going, he might be good, let's give him 5 years, he might be good, let's give him 3 years. If you give everyone the same amount of time, the same kind of structure, the same flow through the whole club, we'll probably find better results because we can have a good youth team that can win Premier Division 2 or whatever they call it as much as they like. But at the end of the day, I'd much rather have 1 or 2 standout players than a team who's doing well in the under 23s.
Well, because we want players to come through to the first team.
We want Wayne Rooney. I'd take one Wayne Rooney over the whole youth system at the moment. Obviously, apart from Gordon and Branthwaite like that. But you want
the most decorated English player ever.
No, yeah, but we only want a couple of them.
No, but I mean, in the way I want one good player to come out of a crop of players rather than a bunch of average ones. If of course not. Wayne Rooney, I take an abundance of them at the moment. But what I mean is, we need 1 or 2 standout players, and not just a good side who wins the under 23 double. As nice as it is, who honestly cares? Let's be honest.
It's long forgotten, and all of those players have already left now. So it meant nothing in the end in terms of first team success. And just on that note, before we finish up on Branthwaite, I think we need to be decisive this summer, don't we? Where we go with him.
Yeah. Definitely. I honestly, I don't want to chew my food twice, but yeah, a good loan. I wouldn't even go to Championship. I'd quite like to see him go abroad if possible, and the Eredivisie or the Bundesliga or somewhere like that, but somewhere that needs a centre-back badly, so he gets that John Joe Kenny here. John Joe Kenny is now an asset, whereas last summer he wasn't, so we'll either use him or we'll sell him for decent money, depending on the market. Ideally, you want the loans to be like that. Obviously, all the players aren't going to get loans that good, but the better ones are. Jarrad Branthwaite clearly looks like he's one of the better used products, so he's going to get a better loan than, say, an Ellis Sims will, who everyone is quite high on, but he hasn't proved as much as Branthwaite has at this point, has he?
Yeah, I think at this stage we do need to start seeing more of these players get first team appearances, even if they don't have to pull any trees up, but it just alerts people to them. I think the fact that they've made a few first team appearances, even if it's only brief ones at the end of the season, like maybe the way Branthwaite has, I think you need to do
first
a bit more of that.
First team and loan appearances they're just the most important thing in young players' development, because it's kind of been described as like under 23s versus League Two. It's almost like technical ability versus physicality. I can't remember where I saw that. I'm ripping that off someone. I can't really think about it now. And I mean, I'm just going to give an example which none of you will know about. But at Gateshead this season, there's a young lad called Josh Coyote. He came in from Rotherham youth team, and he said he learned more in the half a year that he was in the National League North than he ever did in the academy, because it teaches you the physicality that you need to be a Premier League player these days. And it's so important to just, get kicked about a bit, face, proper grown full-time, but, like proper established players, because you learn a lot more than playing City's 18-year-olds or, United's 18-year-olds. That doesn't really matter in development at the end of the day.
Leon Osman said the same when he went on loan. He said he couldn't believe it. The players were swearing at him, his own teammates. When he was a kid, he was going, "Don't lose the effing ball," and it was people's livelihoods that paid their mortgages. And he went, it was just an eye-opener compared to, well, that was under 21s at the time. Like, the sort of cosy environments, and it's probably 10 times worse now, of the under 21s, where they've all got Gucci wash bags and 4x4 cars and stuff, and they all think they're players, but they haven't done it yet. And, that's part of modern football, I know, but they need to play proper football to see if they're good enough. And if they're not good enough, make money off them. We have, that's one thing we have done. We've developed a lot of players for the Football League. If they're not good enough for Everton, sell them on. If we sell John Joe Kenny and Tom Davis, there's two players we've developed and have, and it look amazing on the books because they've been developed and sold on.
Yeah.
And then
we need to do more selling on, though, rather than running contracts down like Pennington and Garbutt.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's crucial with Branthwaite now. But we'll finish up with Branthwaite anyway. We've got to do a score out of 10. What would you just go with? It's only 4 games, but
on the potential Tony Hibbert Fish in Paradise Afterlife scale, I'd probably give him for what I've seen in the whole, considering the circumstances, I'll give him an 8 out of 10 for what he's done. But not an 8 out of 10 player. I'd say in the situation he's in, he's done an 8 out of 10.
Handled it very well, yeah. Teddy?
Yeah. It's a bit skewed because of the sample size, but mate, he came from League One, League Two, playing 9 games, and has played Premier League games and played well. I'm giving him a 10. He's done well. He could have had a disaster class, mate. He, as a kid who hadn't even played many games at League Two, and he came into Premier League matches and acquitted himself, giving him a 10. If he'd have played 38 games, he might have had a more realistic score, but I don't see how you can fault him when you take in the circumstances. So 10, he's probably going to get the highest of the season.
I'd like to change mine to a 9, actually. I think it's a bit hard.
Well, I was going to go with a 9, so we've sort of got a bit of an even spread there. And also, I think, we're not going to top that. You can't top a 10 out of 10. I think Branthwaite gets the Player of the Season award right there. There you go. Yeah, so there you have it, guys. The Jarrad Branthwaite review. Let us know how you think he's got on. You give your scores out of 10, how you think he's got on. Give this video a like and subscribe to the Toffee Blues for more content, where we'll probably be putting the jury out on a lot more players, and probably not quite as positive as this show. So definitely tune in if you want to vent your anger as well, because that'll be very fun, I guess. I mean, we all deserve to after what we've suffered this season. So yeah, definitely subscribe for that. And until next time, thank you for tuning in on the Toffee Blues.